All right, so here we are again. Similar, same ideas. Now we're going to look at some numerical data. So we were able to ask some questions and determine how we can inspect and look at categorical data. We looked at it in Excel. We looked at it in Fathom using bar plots specifically. Now we're going to look at some numerical data, and we'll also take data from Excel and put it into Fathom. And so to do that, we're going to look at the Gapminder data set. Now this data set is a little bit clunkier because we have each of these different situations. So we'll look in Excel first. And to do this, we might want to look at just 1 year. Okay, and this is where things get a little bit tricky because Afghanistan is measured 12 times. Okay, so there's 12 different years where Afghanistan has been measured. We can't necessarily take an aggregate of the data, but what we might want to look at is we want to look at, okay, what does it look like in 2007? So this is where filtering by year might help. And so we can use the sort filter command in Excel to look at some things. So I think we're going to do filter. When I hit that filter button, you'll notice all these now have filter buttons on them. And let's just sort of spread these out so we can see them. It's also important that each of these are, I should have mentioned this before, you notice that there's no units in these things, okay, that they're just straight up numbers. If these are not numbers, both Excel and Fathom won't recognize them as such, and you'll get a really clunky chart. It's not necessarily worth going into right now. You'll look at it in your first data set, but we'll have a look here. So let's take a look and let's filter only for the year 2007. Okay, so that now you can see I had a whole bunch of cases. Now you can see I've got 1, 13, 25, etc. So I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of this. Okay, so this is the process in Excel to look at things. And I create a new sheet and I'm going to call it Gapminder _ 2007. Okay, so I've named it and then I'm going to paste it in this first cell. Okay, so now I have only the year 2007 in here. Okay, so this is again helpful for us rather than looking, because the danger of looking at something and I've got all these different years is I can't really compare things. So the purpose of looking at a distribution of data is to compare it. So what we can do, for instance, is if we want to look at, say, just the life expectancy. Like, what does the life expectancy look like? Again, I'm going to take the entire data set for that column, and I'm going to go, so now I'm just looking at life expectancy. I don't know what country I'm dealing with. Okay, I just have the expectancy. I just want to see, okay, what's the distribution look like? To do that, we're going to use a chart. And it's probably easiest to look at recommended charts for this. This chart here is not helpful. It's giving us our index numbers and things are just not helpful. This again, not so sure. This is really what we want to look at. This is what's called a histogram. Okay. Histogram is how we look at one variable, and these headings on the side represent the low end of the bin and the upper end of the bin. They're kind of tricky to look at. So if I hit OK here, so I have a chart that shows up. I can manipulate the title, but this doesn't look great necessarily. And, why do I want to choose 72.013? Like, what we can see is that most of these countries are 56, 55 of these countries have life expectancy between 72 and 80. Okay. what we might want to look at here, and you can change the different types of charts, but this might be easier to look at. I find it much easier to look at in Fathom. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to copy all this. I think Control A should do it here too. If I hit this, Control A will copy all the data, okay, or select all the data. Okay, and then I'm going to hit copy. Then I'm going to go to Fathom. I'm going to drag a collection down, and you'll notice the box has nothing in it. Collection 1, if I right click on the box, it says paste cases, right? So I want to paste all the cases into this box, and I want to rename it Gapminder 2007. Now again, if this is highlighted and I drag a table down, I can see I've got the chart. That's good. I've got 142 countries. That's good. They're listed alphabetically. Maybe I want to take a look at a graph, okay, specifically a graph of life expectancy. Okay, and this is more typical what we'd see. You notice it's a similar shape to what we looked at last time. This was called a dot plot. Okay, in a dot plot, we see each country is an observation. Okay, so each individual is represented by a dot. This is set so that the dots stack onto each other, so that, you know, if there are many dots in a similar range, they'll just kind of pile up. So we see this sort of, okay, there are many countries that have a life expectancy in this sort of 72 years range. Okay. The histogram is another type of chart we can look at. Again, these bins, each bin again is stacked up on each other. So this would represent, I'm going to put another graph down here, and I'm going to put life expectancy right here. And we can see each bin represents these. So this is another neat little tool. We can see this bin captures all these dots. So this bin goes up to 20. So there are 20 dots here. We can count them up. Okay. When a histogram has very narrow bins, it's not necessarily useful. So what we like to do is maybe spread the bins out a little bit. Okay, and as we do that, they kind of move off the page, but this might be a more reasonable 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bins. Okay, so that is handy. The other type of graph that we'll look at is called a box plot, and I'm just going to actually put that right here. And a box plot here shows quarters of the data. Okay, so this middle box and a whisker here. So this whisker says, okay, 1/4 of the data is less than approximately, 58 years of life expectancy. And that's represented by these data. You can see the data is broken into, this is approximately 1/4 of the data. Then I have another 1/4 of the data here. Okay. Then I have another 1/4 of the data here. And then I have another 1/4 of the data here. Okay. And so each, the data is broken into quarters, and the picture here. So this middle line here represents the median life expectancy for these 142 countries. So the median life expectancy is approximately, it looks to be approximately, 71, 72. And to inspect this further, we can use numerical summaries. And so this numerical summary, we have a mean life expectancy of 67. We'll get to shape, center, and spread a little bit later. We'll just look at some basics here. So let's do this 5-number summary here. And so this median here, we said was about 72. That says half the data is below this number, half the data is above this number. The minimum life expectancy is 39 years. The first quartile, so 1/4 of the data is less than life expectancy 56, and 3/4 of the data is less than life expectancy 76. Okay, and so this gives us a sense of what the data looks like from numerical values. We also looked at inputting the data into Fathom. Okay, you can analyze data far easier in Fathom than you can in Excel. So that's what I've got here, and we will see you again later.